What if I told you that most of your suffering, the anxiety, the regret, the constant mental noise, isn't caused by your life? It's caused by the fact that you're almost never actually living it. Think about that for a second. Right now, as you're watching this, part of your mind is probably somewhere else entirely. Maybe it's replaying a conversation from yesterday, rehearsing something you need to say tomorrow, worrying about money, or just drifting through a fog of random thoughts. And that mental wandering, that constant leaving of the present moment, is the single greatest source of human pain. That is the central argument of one of the most quietly revolutionary books ever written, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This isn't a self-help book in the usual sense. It's not about productivity hacks or morning routines. It's about something far more fundamental, your relationship with time, with thought, and with the deepest part of who you are. And whether you're religious, spiritual, atheist, or somewhere in between, the ideas in this book have a way of cutting right through to something true. So, settle in. Because by the end of this, you might just see your own mind and your own life in a completely different way. Before we get into the book, let's talk about the man who wrote it, because his story is almost as remarkable as the ideas themselves. Eckhart Tolle was born in Germany in 1948. By his late 20s, he was living in London, studying at Cambridge, and by all external measures, doing well. But inside, he was in agony. Depression had been a constant companion for most of his life, a deep, suffocating sense of dread that he couldn't shake no matter what he achieved. Then, one night when he was 29, something happened. He woke up at 3 in the morning in a state of absolute despair. And in the middle of that darkness, a thought arose. I cannot live with myself any longer. And then, and this is the part that changed everything, another part of his mind asked a question. Who is the I that cannot live with the self? Are they two different things? That question cracked something open. And what followed was what he describes as an inner transformation, a sudden dissolving of his identification with his thoughts and his suffering. The mental noise stopped. He felt for the first time a deep peace. He spent the next several years sitting on park benches in a state of quiet joy, barely speaking, barely doing anything. People thought he'd lost his mind. He thinks he finally found it. Eventually, he began talking about what had happened. People started listening. And The Power of Now, first self-published in 1997, grew slowly into one of the best-selling spiritual books in history, eventually reaching over 3 million copies and being translated into 33 languages. Oprah called it one of her all-time favorites. Millions of ordinary people have said it changed their lives. And yet it's not an easy read. It's dense, sometimes strange, and it asks you to question things you've never thought to question. So let's do exactly that. The problem: you are not present. Tolle opens the book with a deceptively simple observation. Most human beings are not present for their own lives. Now, that might sound strange. Of course you're present. You're right here, watching this. But here's what Tolle means. Your physical body might be here, but your attention is almost never fully here. Close your eyes for a moment and notice what's happening in your head. There's probably a voice running, commenting on things, making plans, worrying, judging, remembering. Maybe it's narrating this video back to you. Maybe it's reminding you of something you forgot to do. This voice never really stops. Even when you sleep, it shows up as dreams. Tolle calls this the thinking mind, and he makes a radical claim. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices the thoughts. This is one of those ideas that sounds simple, but if you really sit with it, is absolutely mind-bending. There's the thought, and then there's the one watching the thought. And that watcher? That's the real you. Tolle calls it presence, or being, or sometimes just consciousness itself. The problem is that most of us are so completely identified with our thoughts that we've forgotten this distinction. We think we are our minds. So when the mind says, "I'm a failure," we believe it completely. When the mind spirals into fear, we experience that fear as reality. When the mind replays an old wound, we relive it as if it's happening right now. And that is the root of most suffering. Not life itself, but our relationship with our own thinking. The ego and its obsession with time. So what is it that keeps us trapped in this unending mental chatter? Tolle points to something he calls the ego. Now, when Tolle uses the word ego, he doesn't mean arrogance. He means something more specific. The false self that is constructed entirely from thought. The ego is the character in your head who has a name, a history, a collection of opinions, fears, and desires. The ego is the one who's constantly thinking about what happened to it, about what might happen next, about whether it's good enough, whether people like it, whether it's going to be okay. And here's the key insight. The ego cannot exist in the present moment. It can only survive in time, specifically in the past and the future. Think about it. The ego is built from memory, from all the stories about who you are, what you've been through, what you've done, and what was done to you. And it constantly projects forward into the future, worrying, hoping, planning, dreading. But in the now, in this exact moment, the ego has nothing to hold on to. This is why Tolle says that time is the enemy of presence. Not clock time. We obviously need to plan our days and remember things. But what he calls psychological time, the mind's habit of living in the past and future as if they were more real than right now. Regret is living in the past. Anxiety is living in the future. And both of them pull us away from the only place where life actually exists, which is this moment right now. The power of the present moment. So what does it actually feel like to be fully present? Tolle describes it as a kind of aliveness, a quiet, alert awareness where you're fully here, without the constant mental commentary. Not blank or empty, but vivid. Like when you step outside on a cold morning and the air hits your face, and for one moment, you're just completely here. Or think about the last time you were so absorbed in something. Music, a conversation, a beautiful sunset, maybe even a difficult task you were completely focused on. That time seemed to stop. No worrying, no planning, no inner chatter. Just this. That is presence. And most of us have experienced it in flashes without ever realizing what it was. Tolle says those flashes are available to us far more of the time than we think. Not in some mystical way that requires years of meditation, though meditation helps, but through the simple and yet surprisingly difficult practice of bringing your attention to the present moment again and again. He offers a powerful practice. Whenever you notice the mind drifting into past or future, ask yourself, what is actually happening right now? Not in your head, in actual reality. What do you see? What do you feel in your body? What sounds do you hear? This isn't about suppressing thought. It's about anchoring yourself in the reality of now. And the now, Tolle says, is not just a better place to be psychologically. It is, in a sense, the only real thing. The past only ever existed as a now that is gone. The future is a now that hasn't arrived yet. Everything that has ever happened to you, and everything that ever will, happens in a present moment. There is only ever this. Watching the thinker. One of the most practical tools in the entire book is what Tolle calls watching the thinker. The exercise is simple. Instead of being swept away by your thoughts, try to observe them. Become a witness. Just watch what comes up in your mind without judging it, without following it down the rabbit hole, without believing it. You might think, I'm so bad at this. Instead of getting caught up in that thought, you can simply notice. There's a self-critical thought. You're not the thought. You're the one who noticed it. This creates what Tolle calls a gap, a small but enormously powerful space between a thought and your reaction to it. And in that gap is where real freedom begins. Here's why this is so important. We can't control what thoughts arise. The mind is going to do its thing regardless. But we don't have to take every thought seriously. We don't have to follow every train of worry down to its catastrophic conclusion. We don't have to believe every story the inner critic tells us. And once you start watching your thoughts instead of being swallowed by them, something remarkable happens. They begin to lose their power. The "I'm not good enough" thought appears. You observe it, and it passes. The anxious spiral about the future begins. You notice it as a pattern, not a prophecy, and its grip loosens. Tolle says, the moment you realize you are not present, you are present. That's the practice. Noticing, returning, noticing, returning, over and over, for the rest of your life. The pain body. Now here's a concept that people either immediately recognize as deeply true or find completely strange, sometimes both at once. Tolle introduces what he calls the pain body. The pain body is essentially an accumulation of old emotional pain, a kind of energetic residue that lives in us from past hurts. Personal trauma, childhood wounds, collective suffering passed down through families or cultures. Tolle says we all carry this, to varying degrees. The pain body is dormant most of the time, but then something triggers it, a specific word, a tone of voice, a situation that echoes an old wound, and suddenly it activates. And when it does, it feeds. It wants more pain. It hijacks your thoughts and turns them toward grievance, fear, or despair. It distorts how you see reality. Sound familiar? Have you ever had the experience of a small thing setting you off in a completely disproportionate way and later thinking, why did I react like that? That, Tolle suggests, is the pain body. And the way out is not to fight it, suppress it, or analyze it endlessly. The way out is, again, presence. When you feel the pain body activated, you become the observer. You feel it in your body, the tightness, the heat, the contraction, and you watch it without identifying with it. This is deeply counterintuitive. We're trained to either act out our pain or run from it. But Tolle says, watch it. Be with it, don't become it. And in that clear, present awareness, the pain body loses its power to control you. He's not saying the pain disappears immediately. He's saying that the unconscious suffering, the kind where you're swept away without knowing it, that becomes possible to dissolve. Presence in relationships. One of the places where presence, or lack of it, shows up most vividly is in our relationships. Tolle makes a striking observation. Most of what we call love is actually a form of need. We look to other people to complete us, to validate us, to fill the void that comes from being disconnected from our own inner being. And when they can't do that, because no one person can, we feel disappointed, resentful, or abandoned. He distinguishes between two kinds of love. The first, the kind most of us are familiar with, is based on the ego. It attaches, possesses, needs. It says, I love you because you make me feel good about myself. And it quietly adds, but if you stop making me feel that way, I might stop loving you. The second kind of love isn't something you do. It's something you are, or rather, something you allow yourself to feel when you're fully present. It's the unconditional warmth that arises naturally when you're not filtering the world through fear and ego. It doesn't demand, doesn't possess, doesn't run away. This doesn't mean relationships are easy, or that conflict doesn't happen. But Tolle says that when both people can access presence, even imperfectly, conflicts lose their toxicity. You stop making the other person into the embodiment of everything wrong with your life. You stop reacting from old wounds. You actually see them. The most loving thing you can offer another person, he says, is your full, undivided presence. Not your advice, not your solutions, not your stories about them. Just your complete, open, non-judgmental attention. And that, in itself, is a kind of gift most of us rarely give or receive. Surrender, the most misunderstood word. Now we come to one of the most misunderstood concepts in the book, and possibly one of the most liberating ideas you'll ever encounter. Tolle talks about surrender, and the immediate reaction most people have is, no, I'm not going to surrender. That means giving up. That means going passive, accepting injustice, being a pushover. But that is not what Tolle means. Not at all. Surrender, in Tolle's sense, means this: accepting the present moment as it is, not as you wish it were. It's the act of releasing the inner resistance to what is happening right now. Here's the distinction that makes this powerful. You can still act. You can still try to change things. You can still speak up, push back, work toward a different outcome. Surrender is not about what you do. It's about your internal relationship with the present moment while you do it. Think about the last time something went wrong. A flight got canceled. Someone let you down. You made a mistake. There's what happened. And then there's the story you told about it. This always happens to me. Why is my life like this? This is unbearable. That story, that layer of suffering on top of the situation, is what Tolle is inviting you to drop. Because resistance doesn't change reality. It just doubles the pain. You have the original problem plus the suffering of not accepting it. Surrender says, this is what is happening right now. I might not like it. I might change it. But I'm not going to waste this moment fighting with the fact that it exists. And in that acceptance, there is a strange peace. Not defeat, peace. Tolle goes further. He says that deep surrender is the doorway to what some traditions call grace, an alignment with something larger than the personal self, a sense of being held by life itself rather than fighting against it. Your inner body and the deeper dimension. One of Tolle's most practical tools for accessing presence is surprisingly simple. Feel your inner body. Right now, close your eyes for a moment, or just soften your gaze, and see if you can feel the aliveness in your hands. Not the shape of them, not what they look like, but the sense of energy, tingling, aliveness that's there if you pay attention. Tolle says the body is always in the present moment. It doesn't know about tomorrow's deadline or yesterday's embarrassment. The body only exists right here. So by turning your attention to the physical sensation of being alive, the breath, the heartbeat, the energy in your limbs, you immediately drop into presence. This is essentially what meditation has always been pointing toward. Not the suppression of thought, but the redirection of attention from the mental commentary to the aliveness of now. And beneath that aliveness, Tolle says, is something deeper still. He calls it being or consciousness or the unmanifested, the silent, spacious awareness that underlies all experience. Different spiritual traditions have different names for it. Some call it God, some call it the Tao, some call it pure awareness. Tolle doesn't insist on any particular label. What he does insist is that it's real, that it's accessible, and that touching it, even briefly, changes something in you. Because when you feel it, you realize that what you fundamentally are is not the anxious, striving, story-driven ego. It's the vast, quiet space in which all of that appears. And that recognition, even for a moment, is profoundly freeing. 7 lessons to carry with you. Before we close, let's pull together the heart of what the power of now is teaching us. You are not your thoughts. The voice in your head is not you. You are the awareness that hears it. That distinction changes everything. The present moment is the only moment. The past is gone. The future isn't here yet. All of life happens now. Begin to treat that as real. Suffering is resistance. Most of our pain comes not from what's happening, but from our insistence that it shouldn't be. Watching your thoughts creates freedom. You don't have to stop thinking. Just stop believing every thought is the truth. Your body is a portal to now. When the mind races, come back to the felt sense of being alive in your body. Surrender is not giving up. It's letting go of the fight with reality. You can act, change, and push forward while still being at peace with what is. Presence is the greatest gift you can offer to yourself, to others, to life itself. The conclusion. I want to close with something Tolle says near the end of the book. He writes that the present moment always will have been. Whatever happens in your life, whatever you go through, whatever you lose, whatever falls apart, this moment, right now, is real. It happened, and nothing can take that away. There's something deeply comforting in that. You don't have to earn the right to be here. You don't have to fix yourself, achieve something, or become a better version of yourself before you're allowed to experience peace. The peace is already here, underneath the noise, waiting, always waiting, for you to stop and notice it. The power of now isn't asking you to become enlightened. It's not asking you to meditate for 3 hours a day or abandon your ambitions. It's asking something both simpler and harder than that. Come back. Come back to this moment. Come back to your breath, your body, the aliveness in your hands. Come back to the one who is watching the thoughts, not lost in them. Because the life you've been looking for, the peace, the love, the sense of meaning, isn't hiding in the future. It isn't waiting to be unlocked once you've sorted everything out. It's here. It's now. It's always been now. The only question is whether you're willing to show up for it.